in. Let me zoom it in. Join with audio.
Recording in
Councilmember
progress.
Johnson,
Present.
Councilmember Cullies,
Here.
Councilmember Gorham, and Mayor Labadie present. An agenda has been prepared. It's been distributed to council and posted online. Does anyone have any questions this evening, council, with the agenda as it's been distributed? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second. Okay, I have a motion by Collies, a second by Cycle to approve the agenda. We'll now call the matter for a roll call vote. Councilmember Cycle? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Collies?
Aye.
Labadie, aye. The agenda is hereby approved. We'll now move on to agenda item number 2, EV charging station program. And we have a memo that's been prepared by our city administrator, Mr. Greg LaRue.
Mayor Labadie and city council members, staff met with Mr. McDivitt from the Energy Management Solutions recently about a no-cost EV charging station program that they have. And following that meeting, we thought it'd be a good idea to hear their proposal, and then council can give us direction following tonight's work session.
Okay. So with that, I would like the record to reflect that it is 6:02 p.m. and Councilmember Gorham has joined us this evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. McDivitt.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I was having problems just a half an hour ago with audio, so I'm glad that we are working. So, yeah, thank you very much, Council Mayor. Appreciate your time this evening. How much time approximately do I have for to kind of present an overview of this no-cost, no-risk EV charging station program? I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. 4 or 5 hours?
We do have another meeting at 7:00 p.m.
Oh, okay.
And I would like to allow time for discussion and questions from council.
Perfect. Well, let me share my screen, and I'll go through. I have about a half a dozen or about a dozen slides. Can everyone see my screen okay? Someone please confirm.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'm gonna go full screen, give it a second to load. Okay, so again, thank you very much for your time. My name's Jody McDivitt. I'm with Energy Management Solutions. Energy Management Solutions is a quick introduction. We are an independent energy consultant based right down the road in Excelsior. Actually, our Vice President of Operations is a Shorewood resident. I don't know if anyone knows Kelly Rogers, but she said hello to everyone. With that being said, so we work with our customers and clients to help at least either save them money or make them money regarding all things energy products and services, of which is this electric vehicle charging station program. This is not our program. We actually partnered with a company called Carbon Solutions Group, so CSG for short. So Carbon Solutions Group is headquartered in Chicago. They have offices all around the country. They're a pretty virtual organization. They have a couple different business models or different business lines. One being the owner and operator of distributed energy assets. So think solar, battery storage, obviously electric vehicle charging stations. The second is they're a pretty large player in the what we call the environmental attributes market. That means the buying and selling of renewable energy credits and carbon offsets. And then back in 2017, they pivoted and had this goal to build out and be the owner and operators of electric vehicle charging station infrastructure across the United States and Canada. So that's a quick introduction. So again, this is a Carbon Solutions Group program. We partnered with them. EMS, my company, we're taking more of a business development role, having these types of conversations. My team does a lot of the initial site analysis of looking at properties on Google Earth images, having discussions and conversations with the local electric utilities, and presenting what we call proposals for review of what types of charging stations would they like to install, the level of charging stations, et cetera, at specific locations. So I'll dive in. I got a couple slides in regard to the EV market. I've been in the EV market since 2015. And back in 2015, it was more educating the market and trying to convince folks that electric vehicles were here to stay, and that this company called Tesla was not a fad, right? They're going to be here. Trust me, they're going to be here, Tesla, okay? And I think we're beyond that point, but there's still a question of how fast is the electric vehicle market coming? And this is a study by Bloomberg New Energy on oil futures. And you can see the black upward trending line are the sales of electric vehicles. The blue downward trending line are the sales of internal combustion engines, so your gas vehicles. So Bloomberg New Energy is predicting that those cross and intersect in the year 2038 in the not so distant future. Another slide. This is a very busy slide. It's by a gentleman by the name of Lauren McDonald, and Lauren is kind of an EV charging guru. He takes all of this third-party information, comprises it, and puts it into fancy charts, and hopefully simplifies it for everyone involved. The takeaway from this slide is Lauren's basically saying electric vehicles, EV charging is technology, right? That's what we're talking about. It's technology and it's evolving. And with any new technology, we have a bell curve, and we go from early adopters, or we go for innovators and early adopters, and then we cross mainstream, and then we go laggards. So Lauren is predicting with all this third-party analysis that we cross the chasm from early adopter stage to mainstream in the year 2028. That's right around the corner. That will be here before we know it. This slide, I love this slide because I think this really hits home. This tells you that every automobile manufacturer is behind electric vehicles. They are retooling their lines. They are investing billions. I think Ford's investing $19 billion with a B, $billion in electric vehicles. An interesting one is you can see it on the Hertz. Hertz did a purchase order for 100,000 Teslas, and that's a rental company, right? So it's no longer a question of are the vehicle manufacturers behind electricity? It's again a manufacturer of how fast do they come, right? So that begs the question now of why we're kind of having this conversation and why we're building out or attempting to build out this nationwide network of EV charging. But the challenge becomes, as you can see on the slide here, there's a lot of challenges to think about when and if you want to install electric vehicle charging. First and foremost is the cost and the budget. Do you have the cost for the charging stations? And not only the cost for the charging stations, but the installation and the cost also associated with ongoing maintenance, ongoing software technology, right? What about driver support with the station, which goes to station health? What happens when a station trips offline? Who's responsible for that? Again, this is technology we're talking about, right? So station health also leads into maintenance. Who's responsible for maintaining the stations? Who's responsible for fixing them when they go online, right? Supporting for your sustainability initiatives and greenhouse gas emissions reductions initiatives, right? Who generates those reports? And the last one's kind of key. What about that stranded asset, right? And why I say that is this is a rapidly evolving technology. Again, charging stations going in the ground today are going to be a lot different than 5 years from now, 7 years from now, etc. And I think the key takeaway is this quote that you see on the slide there. This was from one of our grocery store customers in Ohio, who stated, we thought that we wanted to own and operate charging stations. We're a grocery store company, not a charging station company, right? And that I hear that week in and week out from customers I've been working with for the past 5-7 years. They want to offer the amenity, but they don't want to deal with this other stuff on the slide. So what's the solution? Hopefully the solution is our no cost, no risk EV charging station program. So I'll spend a little bit of time on this slide. As it pertains to no cost, the city is never in a position to owe or to pay a penny for anything. And I cannot stress that enough. You will not pay one penny, right? Carbon Solutions Group covers all capital costs. So they're going to pay for the charging stations. They're going to pay for the electrical drawings. They're going to pay for the installation. And that's the entire installation. So from the transformer or the electrical panel all the trenching, boring, concrete pads, that's all covered by Carbon Solutions Group. And then they pay for the commissioning and energizing the stations. Those are your capital costs. As it pertains to operational costs, Carbon Solutions Group also pays one operational cost. The first being the cost of electricity. That's a one, right? They also, because these stations are what we call smart stations or network stations, they communicate to a cloud server, right? So we don't need to involve the city's IT department or your network or whatnot. They communicate via cellular data communication. So again, Carbon Solutions pays for the electricity. They pay for that annual software licensing, which also includes the cellular data communication fee. And then they're going to pay for all service, maintenance, and warranty work into the future. Okay, so again, zero cost to the city. To maybe make it a little bit more, two potential revenue streams that the city can experience. The first is a monthly license fee. Carbon Solutions Group will pay anywhere from $0 to $100 per month per charging station installed. All right. The second potential revenue stream is a profit sharing stream. They call it an annual utilization bonus payment. So they have determined that charging stations break even at 5% utilization. So 430 some hours of charging per year, station breaks even. At 6% utilization, the city then makes a bonus payment. And it's a dollar amount for every percentage starting at 6. So your payment gets larger as the utilization, so 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. Utilization increases, you get paid more until they come back to you at hopefully in the not so distant future and say there's so much demand on these charging stations, it justifies us adding additional units or additional charging stations. Do we have your permission? And the city is always in a position to say yes or to say no on everything they do. When it comes to types of charging stations, I'll touch base on a second, but they're putting and installing different levels of charging station, and a level means how much power goes into the vehicle. They will also do upgrades and expansions. An upgrade may be swapping out and putting in new technology. So if there's a new charging technology in 5 years from now for conversations, they have the right to pull out that old charging station and install whatever the latest, greatest, newest technology it may be, as well as expansions. You know, if the city comes up with a new building or a new park or a new piece of property or whatnot, you think it may be a good solution for EV charging, please let us know. We would entertain adding additional charging stations. And then obviously I made mention of the sustainability and carbon reduction goals. You guys, you can request those reports. And I strongly encourage you to broadcast. You know, what are you doing regarding greenhouse gas emissions reductions and your scope 1, 2, 3 reductions? There's co-branding opportunities. If Shorewood would like to add to the charging stations, we can wrap those. There's electrical leases that we are, in some municipalities, we're actually incorporating in the use of 1 to a few actual vehicles into the program. I truly believe this is a tremendous amenity to attract and retain the EV driver to the city of Shorewood. And what I mean by that is when I'm personally out and about between my meetings or whatnot, I'm always opening my apps on my phone and I'm hitting one of the apps. I'm saying, where's the closest charging station? Where can I stop, grab lunch or a cup of coffee, plug in, get some juice in the vehicle, and then get on my merry way, right? And then finally, I think, this is truly a complete turnkey solution. It's meant for those organizations that want to offer the amenity, but with zero risk. And I'm going to stress once again, zero risk. You're never in a position to be penalized. You're never in a position to be paying money back for maybe underperformance on the charging stations. So it's no risk to the city. I'll stop for a second. Any questions? Okay, I'll go on. So a question that typically comes up is, how do they make this work? How do they make this pencil out, right? How do they make their money? And there's a couple things. First and foremost, they are going to design the sites for future expansion. So if they're upgrading transformers or running conduit, they're going to bank on the fact that demand will increase. So they're going to, future-proof the site with more conduit or a larger transformer. The second bullet point on the lower left is they take advantage of any federal tax credit or incentives, obviously that the city cannot take advantage of. They'll take advantage also of any state or local utility rebates or incentives. They also obviously purchase these charging stations at wholesale prices, right? They have some accelerated depreciation for accounting purposes. And then finally, they're going to charge the driver a fee to charge their vehicle, right? And they look at that fee as a blended approach for the true cost of electricity, which takes the kilowatt hour rate plus demand charges at certain utilizations. And that essentially gives them that blended cost of electricity gives them a kilowatt hour rate. In Minnesota, that's right around 15 cents a kilowatt hour is their cost. And whether your cost, their cost, whoever is using charging stations. So they're going to add 10 cents to 15 cents on top of that rate. So you're looking at charging the driver 25 to 30 cents per kilowatt hour of charging. Okay. The second way they'll charge a driver this summer, they will be releasing a subscription model. And a subscription model will be completely voluntary. The driver or the fleet vehicles will be able to purchase a subscription for $10 or $20 a month, and that will do two things. Number one, it will lower the overall cost of the charge. So instead of 25 cents a kilowatt hour, maybe it's now 21 cents a kilowatt hour, okay? And then it'll also more than likely include X amount of kilowatt hours per month charged. So I get examples like your old cell phone days where you pre-purchased your minutes. If you go over your minutes, you either pay the difference or you can always upgrade to the next tier. That's kind of their thought process on a subscription model. So that's really how they're making these programs work and how they're making their money. This just kind of gives you an example of different types of levels of charging stations. This is kind of EV charging 101. Please ignore the level 1 charging stations. They do exist, but really no one's installing those nowadays because it is such a slow charge. And when we talk in regards to charging, that fourth row down, the approximate range miles per hour, that's kind of the lingo that we use. How many miles go into the vehicle's battery per hour of charging? Okay, so level 2 and level 2 and up is really where we're looking at installing DC fast chargers. In a lot of folks in a lot of areas in Minnesota, we're kind of getting up into this realm of these DC fast chargers, 180 kilowatts. So they're kind of future-proofing the site. And there's not a lot of vehicles that can actually take that much electricity right now, but they're looking to install higher power chargers today to again, future-proof that location. So this is just an example. This is an example of what maybe a level 2 charging station looks like. This is from a company called ChargePoint. And I want to stress that ChargePoint's a large manufacturer of charging stations across the United States. So Carbon Solutions Group does not manufacture their own stations. So they're going to use what I call best-in-class charging stations from other manufacturers. ChargePoint is one of those manufacturers. This is a company called ABB. ABB is a global manufacturer of electrical parts and components. You probably already have ABB equipment in your power rooms and switchgear, transfer switches and whatnot. ABB makes really, really, really good DC fast chargers, so those higher power chargers. This is kind of an example of a ChargePoint, 62 kilowatt unit. Again, just gives you some visuals of what you may be looking for on property. Regarding the charger design and locations, question always comes up of, does the city of Shorewood have some input into where the charging stations are located? What locations? And really, even let's dive down deeper, what parking spaces, right? And yes, you do. You have input. It's a collaborative effort. Provide me with here's kind of our preferred locations under the notion, though, that if that location becomes cost prohibitive, and cost prohibitive could be a plethora of things, but maybe the transformer is located way down the block and it's going to cost too much power to run the wires and the conductors a quarter mile, for example. If that's the case, we may work with you and say, hey, can we access some common area panel breaker space in your electric room. If that's the case, they would sub-meter and then they would reimburse you for the cost of power. So the takeaway here is it's going to be a collaborative effort on where the charging stations get installed across the city. I may mention this a moment ago about attracting the driver. We're going to put you on those driver apps, right? So the drivers will be able to find your charging stations. They're going to learn a little bit more about your community. So you're going to attract those drivers, maybe coming over from Minneapolis for an arts fair or whatnot, right? They know they can come in, they can get juice, and they know they can make it home. And then finally, there's really not a lot of work from the city. Really, Carbon Solutions Group takes care of it all. After we kind of get to the design stage, Carbon Solutions Group and their project management team works on the electrical drawings. They work with the city on the local permitting. They're going to work with Xcel Energy on infrastructure upgrades. They're going to work with a local electrical contractor, which I want to stress that again, it's a local electrical contractor. So if you know and love and trust local electricians, we would definitely welcome the introduction to that electrical contractor. And then finally, Carbon Solutions Group is going to take care of all the technology, being the charging stations, the software into the future. Here's just some examples of some folks we work with. Closest to you guys would be, we're currently working with City of Plymouth, where we've walked the sites with Xcel Energy. We're doing electrical drawings. City of New Brighton also, we just had a kickoff call this afternoon with Xcel Energy, Carbon Solutions Group, and New Brighton. City Council at Chanhassen looks like they're going to proceed tonight, hopefully. So that would be another one. And then we're working with others in and around the area, from Lakeville and Egan to Burnsville to Marine on St. Croix, up north of Minneapolis. So really, we're working with about 2 to 3 dozen municipalities and cities in and around the Twin Cities area. Time frame. I'm telling folks, we're looking at, if you were to actually sign an agreement today, we're probably looking at 6 months to get charging stations on the ground. And what's driving that? All I can say is these supply chain issues that we're all hearing about, they are real, right? Supply chain issues. When Xcel Energy cannot get an electrical cabinet, there's problems with a billion-dollar organization, right? And really 2 time frames that we're working with internally and all the folks we're talking with. We're hoping that any type of maybe agreement with Carbon Solutions Group would be by the end of March, maybe early April. And what that does is that hopefully allows us to put some charging stations and install them in the ground yet this year. If we miss that, we're targeting the next deadline being in June. And why we're targeting June is there are some incentive dollars that Carbon Solutions Group is taking advantage of from Xcel. Those incentive dollars go away July 1 from Xcel, all right? So it's either Xcel runs out of money for this particular program, or the program sunsets, I think it's July 18th, and they've told us that they will honor agreements that would be signed in June, okay? I'm not saying that if we miss those dates, that Carbon Solutions Group wouldn't be interested, but they may minimize some site locations, or they may install lower power charging stations. So that's all I have. I appreciate the time. I'll open it to questions.
Hey, thank you for your presentation. And I'm not sure if I said your last name correctly. Could you make sure I'm saying it correctly?
It is McDivitt. It's like a divot for golf.
Okay.
In front of it, yes.
Great, thank you. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. McDivitt?
I've got a question. Thank you for the proposal and for your interest and presenting us with the offer. I would imagine that you wouldn't see profits for a few years, depending on the amount of rebate you get. Is there a typical term that you were proposing in your agreement with the city?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the one thing, again, I've been in this business since 2015, right? The one thing that I love about this program is the vision that Carbon Solutions Group has. And what I mean by that is it's a much longer term vision. They're looking at this market with a year 2030 perspective. So they know that in a lot of cases, they are probably not going to make money for the next few years. Okay. So that's the answer to your first question. The second question would be the term of their agreement is a 10-year term with 2 5-year renewal options. The renewal options they will make mutually agreed upon. All right, so essentially it's an initial 10-year term. I'm of the mindset, and what I'm recommending is 10 years sounds long, but not in a rapidly evolving technology like we're experiencing right now. Right? And I'm of the mindset that if someone else is willing to take the risk and take care of the charging stations, the infrastructure, make sure that you have the latest, greatest.
I want to raise my hand here,
maybe
people. I got a
think
question.
hard about assigning that risk to somebody else. Carbon Solutions Group is willing to take that risk. So that's kind of my thoughts on, and hopefully answering your question, I should say.
Thank you.
And Mr. McDivitt, when we met last week, you indicated that you would work with the city on the actual locations and you'd be willing to put charging stations in more than one location in the city.
No.
Absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you need to have ultra fast charging station?
Ultra fast. Are you talking the 100 kilowatts and above or greater?
Yeah. Does it need to be a certain type of infrastructure close by so that might limit where we can even install one?
Yeah, when the majority of even DC fast chargers and definitely the ultra fast are 480 volt 3-phase. So now you're looking at, do you need to do step up transformers essentially? But 480 volt being pretty common across most communities.
How long does it take for the fast charger to charge a vehicle?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really kind of a loaded question. And this is on any charger, right? Because I think there's a lot of variables that go into that. Variables being what vehicle is charging, what's the size of the battery on the vehicle. If it's a level 2, kind of what's the efficiency? I'll just say what's the efficiency of the vehicle to accept the charge, and then finally, what's the state of charge on the battery? Is the state of charge at 10%, like almost on empty, or is it 75%, right? So when you're looking at level 2 stations, I tell people you're going to be charging, you're getting 25 miles of range. So a rough rule of thumb is going to be 2 to 3 hours. If you're looking at the faster chargers, the 180 kilowatts, it may only take 20 minutes, if that. And again, the challenge when you get to faster chargers is the vehicle. The vehicle will actually slow down the charge once the state of charge on the battery gets to about 85 to 90% state of charge on the battery. So if you're at, another way to maybe describe this is, if I plug in and I'm at 25% state of charge on the battery, my vehicle is going to tell that charging station, give me all the juice you can give me. And there actually is a communication protocol, a communication between the charging station and the vehicle. Once the vehicle battery gets to, let's just call it 85% state of charge, the vehicle tells the charging station, slow down, and then you'll see the power drop off. Okay, and that is essentially a component of the vehicle protecting itself. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how we determine what kind of, going into the agreement, how do we know what kind of charger we need to attract people, and does it, where would it go to attract people? I'm just thinking about if it's a charging station at a park, how long would they need to be there to make it attractive for them, considering they probably already have a charging station at their home?
Well, and that's a great point, right? Typically, most folks will pull out of their garage with a full charge, and they're going to drive to work. Hopefully, they can plug in at work and get some juice, get a charge. They leave work, They want to go to the grocery store or maybe go to the kids' hockey game or lacrosse game and plug in. So that's kind of where I'm going at with it may only take them 15 minutes. Right? They may be able to plug in and get enough juice because they're continually topping off. So your local residents are probably just going to continue to top off. Getting the folks over from other cities, obviously they're going to consume more electricity driving to, obviously the city, and then they will take longer to charge. But on a 50, 100 kilowatt, 180 kilowatt station, to get to 85% of charge, again, it may only take them 15 minutes to half an hour. When it comes to charging, there's a lot of rough rules of thumb. So I apologize for not being able to give you a concrete answer. It's just, it goes back to all those variables.
Okay. We do have one EV expert on the panel here.
Well, and we've got another one who could turn his camera on. And he's the one who got me into it.
Right.
But, as I look at PlugShare or any of the apps and look at the chargers that are available up and down the Highway 7 corridor, there are not many. There are not many level 2, and there are 0 level 3. If we're looking to attract people to come take advantage of our chargers, then I would be looking at the level 3. If we're looking just to provide an amenity for those who are coming to use our park, resident and non-resident, then yeah, the level 2 could work, but they're not going to be a draw. It's not going to be somebody who forgot to plug in their car last night and goes, oh, I need to get to a level 3 quick. They're going to be thinking to themselves, can I make it to Target Ridgedale, which is probably the closest one.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think now is a great time for Shorewood to be looking at this, just because of what we're doing, working with other municipalities and the Xcel Energy rebates, right? And Carbon Solutions Group is very interested in installing DC fast chargers. But the challenge with that is, comes down to cost. What's the cost of the fast chargers? And then demand charges. So Xcel made it a little bit attractive today. That's going away on both of those fronts. So they're really looking at and pushing me to find locations where they can install 24, 50, 62 and a half, up to 180 kilowatt units. And who was the other EV driver?
The other EV driver is the former mayor of Shorewood. I do have another hand that's been raised by a member of our viewing community here. If we're going to open it up to Mr. Zerby, I would also like to open it up to the first individual who had his hand raised. But before I do either of those people, council, do you have any additional questions?
I don't have any questions, but I think it does kind of beg the, I guess, discussion. What's the purpose of this? I don't have any problem. I mean, I can see electric vehicles growing in popularity and the market moving that way. But is it, something we want to put in as an amenity that you charge your car while your kid's at a sports game or whatever? Or are we attracting somebody? So I guess overall, I'm kind of wondering what council's thinking in terms of what's the reason for doing this. It's not that I object to it in any way. I'm just curious, what's our goal? And I don't really have a thought one way or the other, just kind of, that's what I'm thinking.
Councilmember Johnson, do you have any thoughts about that last comment?
Well, I mean, I can go both ways with it. Since it's no cost to us, but we do get some of the profit sharing if we wanted to open up, so-called destination charging, fast charging, not like the level 2 charging. I would be interested in doing so, but understanding what is the right location for that. I don't think our parks would be that location, because we wouldn't want to be tying up our parking spots at that time. I think of something like Tonka Splash. The last thing we want to do is bring in a bunch of EV traffic while we have all the other traffic at the same time. So I guess that's a council.
Like City Hall, and it's attached to a park. I guess that's where my comment came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Mr. Johnson, I do hear that a lot. And I'm kind of, yes, that's kind of thinking in today's mindset. And please don't take that the wrong way.
That's fine.
This was a gentleman from Carver County that the same kind of question came up. They were talking with some of their parks because we hopefully do some installations with Carver County. And they were thinking the same way, like, well, we don't really want to do the dog part because there's limited parking there. And one of I think it was the county administrator, he kind of chimed in and said, you're thinking kind of today, you're not broadening that vision and thinking 3 years, 5 years, 7 years down the road when a vehicle is just a vehicle, whether it probably may just be electric, right?
So just for the purposes of time, my question goes back to, is it an amenity or something that we want to, that, it's a service? And I think that does kind of determine where you put it and stuff. I'm not objecting to having one. I do think the market's going that way. That's all I'm going to say on the subject, and I'll turn my time back over to Mayor Labadie.
Okay, Mr. McDivitt, did you have any other thoughts that you were on that line of communication you were just putting forth?
No, I think it's, and that's, can you hear me? Because I went on mute.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, it comes up a lot, and my goal is to say, okay, expand that vision a few years into the future because the vehicles are coming. We know the vehicle's coming. And I think as it pertains to the amenity, I'll just, maybe what others have said, is it's really kind of both, right? It's kind of both an amenity for residents. It's an amenity for the staff. Where can the staff plug in and charge if they want to go electric vehicles? Which kind of ties into any type of sustainability goals and greenhouse gas emissions reduction, which kind of ties into, clean air for everybody involved on that. And the list kind of goes on and on. I strongly believe of the benefits of electric vehicle charging. And I'll even take it a step further that, the fuel for an electric vehicle is manufactured right down the street at a local power plant. So you can even take it as far as local job creation and job security for some folks. So again, I think there's a whole bunch of reasons why a city, town, municipality would consider the installation of EV charging.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Collies, earlier you had started talking and I think I cut you off.
No, I was just wondering also that, questioning the amenity issue, that I guess the idea that people would be coming to Shorewood specifically for this purpose. And so I'm not just following that. I suppose not having an electric car, like you were saying, you got the app and you got to go look for a place to charge up. So they would come to Shorewood. I can see that.
It happens to me all the time. I'm a sucker. I'll be driving, I'll be between sales calls. I open up my app. Next thing you know, I just spent $15 at the local deli and wasn't planning on it that morning, right? So it is a good way to attract some folks into town.
Council, are there any other questions for Mr. McDivitt? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to ask the host to unmute Mr. Turbine guy's microphone. And if you could just state your name and address for the record. I'm going to allow a very limited question, and then I'm going to also allow a very limited question by Mr. Scott Zerby, and then our time is going to be about done for the evening.
Okay, hello. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Jay Nygaard from Orono, Minnesota, 1386 West Point Road, better known as a turbine guy in the area. Y'all know I'm a green energy guy, and I'm all for green energy. And I'm also for limited government and other things. So my question here, my big question here is, why are we considering using government to install a gas station for electric vehicles? Typically, when someone gets a gas station, they buy their own land, they install their own pumps, and then they sell their gas. These people are selling electricity and making money off of it. Why is a city considering doing that when it should be a private entity? Although the city could do things to help that entity succeed, to me, it shouldn't be on city property. It should be on private property. So that's my question. Why are we going after public property to provide profit for a private corporation? Thank you.
Mr. McDivitt, you do approach a lot of municipalities. Can you address Mr. Nygaard's questions in a couple sentences?
Yeah, I think I just alluded to the fact of the various amenities, right? And it becomes a private-public type of program that seems to work best where there's vested individuals, right? Vested parties. The property's already there. There's a potential way for this program to make some revenues and save the taxpayers a little bit of money regarding the future use. I think it also comes down to those other amenities that we mentioned. Does your community want to make a stand and show the leadership in the transition to this electric mobility and kind of leadership in greenhouse gas emissions reductions and whatnot? So how does it tie into the overall GHG reductions for the entire community? And then I think it goes into those other components of the local job creation. We could even take it a step further of national security if we wanted to go down that road. So I think it really blends itself to, there's a lot of positives, and municipalities represent more than just one entity.
Do you realize how he's not answering my
Hopefully that helps
question?
answer the question as I'm thinking it through, but it's a very good question. Yeah.
Mr. Zerby, did you wish to ask a question this evening? If so, may you please state your name and for the record.
Of course, thank you, Mayor Labadie. My name is Scott Zerby. I live at 5680 Christopher Road, Shorewood, Minnesota. I don't think my question can be answered tonight, but I would say some of the questions I have would, of course, involve the contract that the city would be looking at for this. I do support this initiative. I think government has had need to sort of steer energy consumption in different ways. In the past, the government, the state of Minnesota, has been involved in E85 as an example, which is ethanol production for gas cars. I see
All
this as
sold
very
at
similar.
private gas
And the
stations.
amount of space that it would take is minimal. You're just talking about
All
parking
sold
spot
at
that can be
private
used by
gas
either an
stations.
electric car or a regular car. The charger itself is off the pavement and at the edge of the pavement. So I don't see this as really giving a lot of resources.
It's still using
private
city
entities.
property so these guys
Trying
can
to,
make money.
inspire and,
What don't you get?
reduce the amount of
Let's
impact we
support
have on the
this
environment.
business
So
because
I'm
we like
based on
their
my
fueling.
experience As Council Member Johnson said, there's not a lot of power stations, so
Sorry.
to speak, chargers in the nearby vicinity. So it could be a lifesaver literally at some point for sure.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Council, I'm going to turn it back over to you now. Are there any additional questions for Mr. McDivitt, or how would you? Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
Yes, I'm wondering, any of the municipalities that you've partnered with, have any of them kind of replaced some of their city vehicles with electric vehicles? I'm thinking of like inspections department, that type of thing.
No, absolutely. So, City of Plymouth had 2 electric vehicles already on their fleet. They're adding an additional 3 vehicles for this. Exactly what you may mention. Inspection
Plymouth,
vehicles, right?
huge city.
City of New Brighton,
Spring
is
Park,
to do
4 or 5
electric
employees.
vehicles to be,
All of this for 4 or
same
5
exact thing,
employees?
right? Inspectors.
I'm not
But they're
sure.
also looking at the Ford Mach-E or the Tesla Model 3 to be part of their police department. Now, they don't know what that looks like yet, if it's going to be actually cruising or whatnot, but they're looking at that. City of Lakeville is really, really, really excited and looking at the electric pickup trucks, right? And they're pushing me to say, we would really love to include a Ford 150 pickup truck, electric pickup truck into the overall proposal. And I told them, yes, you and everybody else in the country wants the pickup trucks. You know, they're Ford stopped taking deposits on the pickup truck because they know they can't produce as many. So to answer your question, yes, fleets are transitioning over to electric vehicles, and there's benefits to that, right? There's no moving parts and pieces, as you know, in an electric vehicle. And I joke all the time, as it pertains to service, you basically change the windshield wiper blades and you change the tires, right? And to fuel an electric vehicle is significantly less, and it's easy to do with today's gas prices, gasoline prices. So, you know, you're about $1 to $1.25 equivalent of gasoline to drive the same mileage. So there's a lot of benefits from a fleet perspective as well.
Council, any other questions at this point?
I'm wondering about how you determine the on city property, and if it's, let's say it's in front of City Hall, I think we'd want a competitive rate. How do you determine how the rate is set and then adjusted?
Yeah, great question. So first and foremost, Carbon Solutions Group, they have mentioned they want to be the low-cost provider. They need, and I cannot stress this enough, they need the charging stations to be used for them to get a return on their investment. So they have a vested interest to make sure that the rate they charge the driver is an attractive rate. Okay, so that's kind of first thought. When it comes to developing the rate, they look at the commercial tariff of Xcel Energy. So they take the kilowatt hour rate on that general service one tariff, I believe, the kilowatt hour rate plus the demand charge. All right, now Xcel's got some, and a demand charge is typically your highest half an hour of demand on any meter for consumption. So, but Xcel's got some very favorable language to help minimize that demand charge, because demand charges can be very high. They're actually in dollars, like $10 per kilowatt. So at 180 kilowatts, that adds up pretty fast, 180 times 10, right? So they take that, they look at certain utilization percentages, and they're going real low right now, especially in Minnesota, really outside of California. They're looking at lower utilization percentages on all charging stations, 2%, 4%, 6% utilization. That calculation gives them a blended, what I call a blended cost for electricity. As I mentioned, that's going to come out to be right around 15 cents per kilowatt hour cost of electricity, whether you own a station, they own a station, whoever owns a station. And then they add 10 to 15 cents on top of that is kind of their return on investment.
How does the user know how much they're being charged?
Apps will tell them. Typically, when you drive up to the charging station, you're going to be able to open up the app, and it will say on the app, here's the charging rate, here's the charging fee.
Okay.
And a lot of the apps will actually text back to the driver. They'll text the driver saying, hey, you're going into a different pricing scheme, or your vehicle is drawing little power. It's probably completely full battery or whatnot.
Okay, I like the idea generally, and I think it's something, a good service for the city. And I'd like to see an RFP for it. I guess my bigger question is, how do we verify that the rates we're getting are going to be competitive across other installs?
Well, there's a couple things on that. Again, you don't, I guess, right? They will not guarantee a rate. There's too many variables, and for them to actually put in a contract what they're going to charge. But I think, working with Plymouth, signing the agreement with Plymouth, with New Bright, and hopefully with Chanhassen and whatnot, hopefully eases everyone's mind of them being vetted and the agreement being vetted. And obviously I can share those agreements with you, or you can pull down those agreements yourselves and whatnot. So again, if the stations aren't being used, it doesn't do them any good.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, council, any additional questions? We're approaching the 10-minute mark here, and I want to slowly start wrapping it up.
I guess my question is for staff is what direction are you looking for from us?
Well, from staff perspective, is this something you want to pursue? And I think, the next step would be reviewing their draft contract, have city attorney review that to see if the terms are acceptable, if there need to be changes. And then report back on that. If the council has very specific desire on location, where you would like these, or like one, I think we should invite them out to walk and just see what is possible and what isn't. As Mr. McDevitt said, it's a long ways away from the power source. That we might think it's a great spot, but it won't be a feasible spot financially. So those would be kind of the first two steps I would suggest.
Mr. McDevitt, does that sound in line with the route that Plymouth and New Brighton went as well?
We usually look at Google Earth images, right? And that's essentially the first step, Google Earth images. And we can pull a lot off of Google Earth, and hopefully we can find transformers or whatnot. And it's typically kind of, as I mentioned, I talked to Carver County this morning, and it's essentially like locations, but there's always an out clause for both parties on a specific site. Energy resources to walk a site right now, just Excel Energy needs to be involved in those discussions as well. I know Excel is already interested in working with Shorewood. I had the so I know they have an interest. I don't know what that means financially or what they would do for incentive wise. But usually the process is we'll get a site, Google Earth images, under the assumption that Carbon Solutions Group would start a brand new service directly with Excel. If once the agreement is executed and Excel walks the site with your team, with your staff, and they come back with potential cost, both Excel and Carbon Solutions Group, if it's too costly, we come back hopefully with option B. And option B may be, this location is too costly. We would prefer to move it down the parking lot a little bit more. And here's the reason why. We can access a common area panel or a transformer or an overhead or whatever it may be. If you agree to that, okay, we move that location. If you don't agree to it, then you can say we're not interested in moving the charging stations, and we just remove that site from the agreement. No penalties, no harm, no foul, no penalties.
Okay, Councilmember Cycle.
Could we just direct staff to maybe put together some next steps? We're kind of running up on time here. We have a huge meeting tonight, and I need a couple minutes before we, go into the next meeting. But I mean, I think there's just a lot of details. We're probably not going to sort through all of them tonight. So could we direct staff to maybe come up with some ideas of, putting together next steps? I know Julie Moore's on the meeting too, and come back to us with suggestions for implementation.
Councilmember Cycle, I think that's appropriate since you've indicated an interest in this. So has Councilmember Gorham. I have an interest in this, and I'm not sure, Councilmember Collies and Johnson, do you also have an interest in directing staff to pursue this action?
Or I'm not opposed to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel.
Yeah.
Johnson?
I'm good with it. I think I'd want to spend some time giving staff some kind of food for thought, but that's something we can take offline.
Okay, Mr. LaRue, do you feel we've given you the correct direction that we'd like to go?
Yes.
And then I'd just like to state for the record that this is merely a discussion. This is merely a work session. We have simply directed our staff to present us with additional information and take this in further. We have not committed our city to this process. An information gathering session. So Mr. McDivitt, evening. Thank you to Mr. Norgard and Mr. Zerbe speaking from the community and council. If there are any other questions,
That would be Nygaard and or Turbine guy.
To wrap it up.
Let's get that right, lady. Turbine guy.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion by Johnson, second by Gorham to adjourn the meeting. We'll now do a roll call vote. Cycle?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Collies?
Aye.
Gorham?
Aye.
Labadie? Aye. It's unanimous. We stand adjourned at 6:54 p.m., 7 o'clock for our regular council meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.
There we go, folks. Recording stopped. Interesting proposal. I don't know if you can see me much. This is super interesting. So you got a private entity that wants to install fueling stations on public property for private profit. Gas stations got to build their own stations. Maybe they get facilitated. Maybe other businesses have the city help them, but it's still all private. Do you see the blurred line here? This is making government bigger and pushing government to support one form of fueling over another. Now, you all know I'm the turbine guy. I am for renewable energy, but charging electric cars is not off renewable energy. It's off the coal plant up the street. It's off the natural gas plant up the street. It's off the nuclear power plant up the street. And when that's all up the street, what do you lose? Power getting from there to here. Had a great comment. Said, look, let's put a station everywhere there's a turbine on top. I completely agree. Let's put these in. Let's put turbines on top. Let's put solar on it. Let's charge these things locally as much as we can and then get an assist. But hey, that's just a turbine guy talking. Anyways, we got to get ready for the city council because that mayor is going for a variance, which is quite questionable, in my opinion. Turbine guy, signing off.